Hello everyone, and thank you very much for clicking on the video, always greatly appreciated. This is a very quick first impressions look at Myth of Empires, and it's only a first impressions because this game is absolutely enormous and I probably only played about 2% of it, if that. Right here you can see that I was riding my horse up to a city and they were not too happy to see me. That is NPCs firing at me, those are not players. Now, despite the fact I was only playing this in PvE mode and essentially almost single player, although it wasn't on a single player, there were other players around, but I never really interacted with anyone. Despite all that, you do get a lot of fun moments, including here where I'm sneaking up onto some NPCs on patrol and try to kill one, and by the way, it didn't turn out very well. The swordplay is nice. The way you move is nice. And it can be pretty epic. It's all quite well done, to be honest. I really enjoyed the game. I found my first few hours in the game a little confusing. I'll talk about that in a sec, but I really enjoyed it. Now, this game is clearly a game developed by Chinese developers because there is an odd menu UI system. I say odd because it's not one that most Westerners would jump in and find super easy to interpret, but once you get the hang of it, you do figure it out, and that's because it can be a mix of Chinese characters and English. Now, before we get into anything else, let's talk about the issue that Myth of Empires does have. They have been accused of stealing source code from Wildcard or Snail Games, the developers of Ark. That has led to an injunction, and they have removed Myth of Empires off Steam, and they are obviously fighting that injunction, but in the meantime they have put Myth of Empires onto the Humble store, so that is another way to sell the game. Keeping in mind that I played a small percentage of the game and this is just a first look, I actually really enjoyed the game. I found it quite fun. The graphics are really nice. It is the wildlife around you, the world around you seems rich and alive. There are NPCs you can interact with. I like that aspect. The building, the gathering of resources is pretty damn good actually. The taming of creatures was really good, and even the capturing of soldiers to make them your NPCs was pretty good. Not overly complicated, but it felt right for the game. I also found the mechanics of the crafting, different crafting benches, the way you get your skills, all these sorts of things were exceptionally well thought out. I did find a slight lack of clarity, perhaps. That might be my Western viewpoint on things, but I did find some of the messaging, the way I needed to skill up or level up, a little bit confusing. There might be some clarity required there in the UI, but this game has the potential to be absolutely enormous and epic. If you wanted to get into it, you can play battles with hundreds of people, lay siege to cities, all sorts of stuff. You can take the game all the way to that, but of course I never did that because I just played it quite small to start with. However, it does have a bit of a problem, and I will break this down into one thing that I definitely noticed: the state or the rate of decay of the buildings. It is just too quick. It requires you to keep logging on constantly, almost every day, and for someone like me, unfortunately, and if the developers happen to watch this, that is enough to put me off the game because I just cannot commit that time to the game. When you get to that decision point, you realize what's the point in building anymore because it's likely to all decay. the rate of decay is just too fast. They have to sort that mechanic out. That simply has killed the game for me. There is also, I found the servers to be quite quiet. The server that I did play on, there was clearly other people around, but there wasn't much talk, there wasn't much activity. And there is also a lot of Reddit threads that when you do get into the bigger part of the game, the battles, and when your bases get quite juicy, there are exploits within the game which a lot of Chinese big tribes, or guilds as they call them in this, use, and they have been causing a lot of problems. So there are some really big positives to this game, but there are also some negatives, and I don't know what the future of the game holds. I hope for everyone's sake it is super positive and they sort out some of these issues and sort out the injunctions and the court orders and all that sort of carry on, because the game itself, when I look at it and when I play it, is incredibly enjoyable. It's one of the more enjoyable games I've played in recent years, and I would really like to put more time into it. But because of the rate of decay, there's no point, because I can't put more time into it. There's nothing I can do about that, so there's no point putting any more time into the game. It's a lost cause. And then the other point is, if I get too big, am I just going to get raided by another big tribe, even when I'm doing PvE because of some exploit? So these things put me off playing the game anymore. However, I will keep an eye on it because the fundamentals are there, and there is so much you can do in this game. I would suggest you watch some videos on it, you get a good look to see if it's your type of game, and if you've got time that you can invest into this, I think you could really, really enjoy it, because fundamentally it's a very enjoyable game. Anyway, thank you for watching. Only a very short video, but hopefully that gives you a bit of clarity about what is going on with Myth of Empires in 2022, and just a very, very first quick look at what it is like to play.